So I went through and watched the 10-hour long biography of What If History. It was not a great time on my end, especially the third part, which was 4 hours long. If you don't know everything altogether, it's like 10 hours long. And if you don't know what I mean, is What If History did a whole biography. I did a video. Essentially, this is a follow up video, but there is a longer format video that I already did. So I'll release that probably by the end of the week because like I just wanted to space it out and just not cover what if history all the time like back to back. I'd rather keep that towards the end of the week for my own personal reasons, but as well as I also want to kind of talk about some of the things around it, some of the people response to it, people I know and their response to it. Um, you know, because it's interesting, right? What if history is an interesting figure in his own right. He started out as doing what if history and then eventually moved on to politics, social issues, and so on, where a lot of them were very schizo and very all over the place. One of the things I should be correcting myself with that I did on the longer format video is what if history is actually younger than me by a couple of years. I think he's like 21, 22. He's like he's in his early 20s, right? But he looks like he's in his 30s, so that's just something. Um, Apologies. That's something. Plus, um, it always freaks me out when I hear about these people and they're younger than me, and I'm like, damn, where were you people in my life? He's also a college dropout, which I thought he had his degree in history, but I'm mistaken. I guess I'm thinking of somebody else. I don't know. I don't know. A lot of these historian people, they usually either have a degree in history or they don't, or they have a degree in something completely different that isn't history. Not the point of the video. That is not the point of the video. The point of the video is to sort of give you a bit of a synopsis of what I saw of the 10-hour long biography, as well as kind of just give you my opinion on the overall thing and whether or not my opinion changed since my original video, since this is really more of a follow-up video. As well, I'm gonna just quickly talk about the whole like people backlash and that whole stuff here and probably towards the end. Basically, people were not happy that he deleted the video and he hasn't really responded or made anything about it. Plus, there was a bunch of tweets that he made that were offhanded, that were insane. Maybe I'll go and read them one day because those are really funny. But oh god, but I think a lot of the consensus is he should either be off the internet or should be locked up. At one person that said. Now I don't agree locking him up. I think that's not the right thing to do sometimes because I know he is schizo and he's autistic, but he's young. And if as I said in my original video, if you don't know, a lot of the time schizophrenia can emerge in male early in their 20s. So I'm not sure if he's just going through his schizo age right now or he's just sort of inching there every single day. You know, but it is what it is, right? You can criticize the man, you cannot like the man. I don't really like the man too much. Like, I don't like his politics too much, and I kind of don't like his personality too much. But I could respect him. I think if anything, he just needs friends and family that are really close to him to tell him to not do shit like that and not release a 10-hour long video, which I'm getting to now, because the first two parts were not bad. If anything, I think the first part did a good job at least explaining his life, his story, and who he is as a person. He gives he gives a good background to like the life before his, like his grandparents and their ancestors, right? And if you know anything, once you know about your past and your ancestors, you have a better understanding of your personality and who you are as a person. Yeah. As a family member once told me, once you understand your past, you have a better understanding of who you are and your people and your personality and so on and so on. I think he has a good understanding of his genealogy for the most part. Um, that does explain a lot of just his who he is as a person, and you really get to see a lot about his past, with what's full of tragedy. Now, one thing I should say is take what I say with a grain of salt, and take what he say with a bigger grain of salt. The reason I'm saying that is mostly because he could. I'm not saying he's making things up, but he could be over embellishing things or being hyperbolic. Now, that's what I'm thinking, or that's what at least people around me have been saying. That maybe it's true what he's saying, but maybe he's over exaggerating. Um, I'm gonna go off and believe that he is not over exaggerating anything, and then what he's saying is true. At least the abuses and everything, because there's other stuff that I don't see it happening and could just be a form of schizophrenia, right, or a form of him coping. I'll get into that when we get into it. Like, cause he talks about it a little bit in the first part and in the second part, and I think people know what I'm meaning. Um, and then he did, he had a very sad, tragic life. Now the second part, though, the second part, and technically the third part, is where the schizophrenia starts to emerge. As in, he talks about like God and Odin and these different beings, and he claims to be a white Protestant, WASP, right? Even though he talks and acts like a Gnostic, it's so bizarre. It is the most bizarre takes I've ever heard, where he goes on about how he made a deal with God or he made a deal with Odin, and how he came to save the right in America, and then he believes that he is like a Masonic figure, that somebody once told him that he was gonna start a new religion. And then the third part, it goes on and on and on about just the third part, in my opinion, is probably the worst part. It is the most gibberish and non. It's just all over the place. It is just gibberish. And honestly, the sad thing about it is the first two part. If he just would have released the first two part, or at least condense elements of the first two parts together, and that this is I made a video about how this is explaining his life, his tragedy, his sorrow. I think a lot more people would have been sympathetic and would have followed him more and liked him more. Rather, what we got in the end is a mix of sympathy and schizophrenia that is driven by pain and trauma and PTSD, which is very sad, right? He's a young man who is, for all rights, he is successful. He is wealthy. He has fame. He has glory, right? He's leading a political movement, or he's in these different groups. And whether or not you like him or think he's cringe, and I will not hold you. I am not a fan of him a lot of the time. I don't agree with a lot of the things he said. I think his incel revolution video was ridiculous. I thought the Civil War stuff he mentioned was very ridiculous and dumb, and then a lot of people fell for it, right? But then once you watch a 10-hour long documentary or whatever, it you really get into it, and that's like, and that's the funny part about it. Or not really the funny, but a tragedy, like a Greek tragedy or like a medieval tragedy, like you know, it it's a sad state of event. That's what I would say. He is a guy who really gone through it all. He's a broken mess in most accounts. He is probably developing schizophrenia. He's autistic. I wouldn't be surprised. You know, but you know, the truth is, once you kind of look into his past and once he kind of goes over it, it's sad. And usually I would make some type of joke or laugh about the craziness. I kind of want to, but like after a day of rest and really thinking about it, I'm trying to take it as serious as I can, right? Because this is a man who is going through life. He is a man that is getting criticized. He probably had a mental breakdown, and doing this video was a way for him to cope, right? Yeah, I can go on about the third part and how it's just esoterical nonsense. He brings up Julius Evola. He brings up the Nord pantheon and different gods, and then there's just the God, the Christian God. It's and how he's here to destroy the left, and defeat them in their false sense of belief. And it's just, it's a wild time. It's a very wild thing. And we're coming towards the end of the video in a couple of minutes. One of the things that came to my mind was if he lived in a different time, in a different age, he would have been a happier person. If he was a merchant, a blacksmith, a farmer, or a clerk, or like a low level bureaucrat, right? I think he would have been a happier man. He would have really gone out in the world, right? Or even if he lived 150 years ago during the dawn and twilight of the industrial age, right? I think he would have made a decent, good bureaucrat or, a businessman, right? In early America or somewhere in Europe, right? But that never happened. And given that his life is tragedy in the making, or it really is just tragedy after tragedy, truthfully, what he got out of it is probably the best course. He is now successful. He's wealthy. He has fame. He's young. He has time. And through all his troubles and strife and the torment of life, he made it out well. Most people, whether they're late millennial or early zoomers, usually don't end up that well. Most of them end up broken or shattered, and they have to spend almost 2 or 3 decades, right, to pick up the pieces. I have a friend that who's close to my age, right, and he's in that he has sort of that late millennials zoomer depression where they just don't do shit for years on end. And when I look at What If History and his problem and look at myself as well, a bit of a reflection, kind of realize that there's some things we have in common and how we came through life and how much we struggle, right, to just survive against the odds. And I think that's one thing you should take away from, not simply from this video, but just from his stuff. Once you remove all the esoteric stuff, is that he is a man who really did live through hell and really made a name for himself when everything was against him. And I think you can't deny that about him. Now, usually I would. Originally, I wanted to end it in a very somber, sad note because I think if What If History worked at a white collar desk job, I think he would have gone postal in the worst case scenario, and it would have been a tragedy. Originally, I was gonna end it in that note because I felt that was right in my head because I think that's just something to reflect that an individual like him, who is making content, who's an entrepreneur, it's better for him to do stuff like that than it is to work at an office job where he hates it every day and there's a possibility of going AP. And that's how I wanted to end both videos. But I guess the longer format I never did. But I had a moment of reflection and realized, let's not end it like that. Let's end it a little bit more hopeful. Because it is a guy, and I'm repeating myself, but this is a guy who really got through it and did the impossible. And I think that's something we can all relate and something we can reflect on ourselves and even be inspired. Yeah, he's a bit of a lunatic, crazy, believing in the olden, semen stuff like that. Who cares? But he did good for himself. And I know he probably won't watch this video, but good on you, What If History. I don't do, I like you a little bit more now. I don't like your politics a lot. I know we probably would disagree on a lot of things, but one thing I would say is, good job, man. You did good for yourself. Maybe take it easy for a little bit, but you did good for yourself. Till then, have a good one, everybody. Be safe and God bless.